T9C got the fucking juice.
Fluke is the new gold.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Fluke is the new gold.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast, aka JT Sports Live. And what's good with everybody in the chat, man? Shout out to my guy Kate Roan. He says, woohoo, stoked you bringing back the live. Yeah, man, it's been a while, man. Last time we went live, I was in the college dorm. Now I'm back at the crib. Hopefully the Wi-Fi doesn't tweak out on us. I expect everything to be pretty smooth sailing, but I have to come on here and go live and talk to you guys today because the Pittsburgh Steelers gave Mike Tomlin a 3-year extension, and there are a lot of mixed feelings from Steeler fans about this. So on this episode, I'm going to be breaking down why Steeler fans have mixed perceptions about Mike Tomlin. Also, going to be giving you guys my NFL head coach hot seat rankings / ratings. I'm going to be addressing the claims about Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers being fool's gold. I'm a little worried about Aaron Rodgers. I'm afraid Father Time might get him this year. And the Tennessee Titans, to me, are the NFL's biggest mystery team going into the 2024 NFL season. Before we dive into it and all, here's a quick word from our partner, Mint Mobile.
Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports in the description and pinned comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint It's easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports in the description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast, man. I'm your host, JT. The first order of business that we got to get into, apologize for the short delay. Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers have agreed to a 3-year extension. He's now going to remain the head coach in Pittsburgh until the year 2027, man. And a lot of Steelers fans have mixed emotions about this extension. And NFL fans are having a hard time understanding why, because they feel as if all us Steelers fans should be excited and happy that we're extending a head coach that's yet to produce a losing season. And the thing with Mike Tomlin is that he has overachieved his last couple of years in Pittsburgh, because for the last 4 to 5 years, there's been a lot of media heads before the start of every season that always says the Steelers aren't going to make the playoffs. This is going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing season, and he always finds a way to overachieve. Last year, this man went to the postseason having to start Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett as his starting quarterbacks. But the issue with Mike Tomlin is his lack of postseason success. And for the other 31 NFL fans out there, they don't understand the expectations that comes with coaching for the Pittsburgh Steelers. For any other fan base, having a winning season, making it to the playoffs is considered a successful year. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise, thinking of all of the history that comes behind putting on that black and gold uniform, having a winning season is bare minimum. You want to know why? Because that's what is expected. What determines how successful a season is for Pittsburgh comes down to the level of success they have in the playoffs. And Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, which means it's been nearly a decade since Mike Tomlin last produced a playoff win for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's the big reason why there is such a divide in the Steelers fan base when it comes to Mike Tomlin. 50% of the fan base defends him, saying that he hasn't had a good roster, hasn't had a good quarterback situation ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired. And the other 50%, they're tired of tolerating mediocrity and complacency, because at one point, the Steelers used to be the gold standard for what a great franchise in the NFL is. A Super Bowl contender year in and year out. And over the last decade, when you think about the playoff losses that Mike Tomlin has suffered, I will never forget the 2011 wildcard loss to Tebow Mania when he hit Demaryius Thomas on the right sideline, first play of overtime. Of course, nobody's going to forget when the Steelers lost at home in 2017, coming off a first-round bye to the Jacksonville Jaguars, led by Blake Bortles. And, of course, 2020, when they got upset by the Cleveland Browns when they had Baker Mayfield and the interim head coach. There's been a lot of shortcomings from Mike Tomlin in the postseason that simply has been inexcusable, in my opinion. Am I one of those people that's going to come on here and say the Steelers need to fire Mike Tomlin? No, but I'm also not somebody who's going to defend him and just act like this dude is just the greatest coach since sliced bread. You can make the excuses for him not having a good quarterback, but he's part of the problem for why the Steelers' quarterback play has been severely lacking the last couple of years. He wanted Mitch Trubisky to be his starting quarterback. I heard Mike Tomlin tell the announcers during one of the little production meetings that they had leading up to the Colts game that the reason he decided to start Mitch Trubisky was because he has experience being a franchise quarterback. What has Mitch Trubisky ever showed us throughout any point in his career? He was a capable franchise quarterback. Never. If anything, the Chicago Bears were able to win in spite of Mitch Trubisky. And who cares if he made it to the Pro Bowl? Then you draft Kenny Smallhands Pickett, who I was never a fan of when he was coming out of Pitt. And I don't believe that Mike Tomlin completely was allowed to have a say in who was going to succeed Big Ben. I definitely think that the ownership, the Rooneys, had a say in that. They also had a say in him hiring Matt Canada. Matt Canada was not a Mike Tomlin hire. And even then, Randy Fichtner, the previous offensive coordinator before Matt Canada, wasn't really Mike Tomlin's preferred OC. He only promoted him to OC because that's who Big Ben wanted, because he didn't get along with Todd Haley. Mike Tomlin, going into this season, has to win a playoff game. And I think it's severely unlikely that he's able to do so. And I think there's a strong chance that the Steelers have their first losing season under Mike Tomlin this year, for the very reasons why I wasn't thrilled for him to get a 3-year extension. This dude is great when it comes to being able to win with less. But part of the reason why he always has to win with less is due to his poor judgment. He's Stevie Wonder when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks. Any coach that has the audacity to say that Mitch Trubisky is a franchise caliber quarterback, I severely question your judgment. And there are Steeler fans trying to hype up old man Russell Wilson. This dude is not good. If your whole argument for Russell Wilson being able to be solid for Pittsburgh is because he had good stats, I don't want to talk to you, because Russell Wilson had better stats than Matthew Stafford, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts in 2023. And if I was to ask you, out of those 4 quarterbacks, who would you take? None of us would be taking Russell Wilson over any of those 3 guys who he had better stats than. Justin Fields has a lot of potential, but he's still an unknown commodity. That's why the Chicago Bears decided to part ways with him and replace him with Caleb Williams, who has yet to take a single snap in the NFL. If Russell Wilson was so good, the Denver Broncos wouldn't have took the NFL's largest dead cap hit in history to get rid of him, and he damn sure wouldn't be playing on a veteran minimum. So fuck what the stats say about Russell Wilson. The dude is not good. Could he be better than Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky? Yeah, but is that saying much? Is him being better than those previous quarterbacks good enough to get the Steelers an AFC North title with a healthy Lamar and Joe Burrow? I don't think so. With how difficult this schedule is, you're going to need way more than great coaching to be able to win in this division. The Browns were able to win with old man Joe Flacco, thanks to the injury that Joe Burrow had, and the Steelers not really being that great. I love Mike Tomlin as a person. He's a great leader of men, and he's a really good coach. But just because he's a really good coach doesn't justify the Steelers any reasoning to keep him around for any longer without him showing us he can win in the postseason again. It's been 8 years since we've had a playoff win. The standard at one point used to be the Steelers were Super Bowl contenders year after year. But ever since 2011, the new standard has been winning seasons and first-round exits in the wild card round. That's not acceptable. It's the same standard that Dallas Cowboy fans have. And you can say that maybe the expectations have become slightly unrealistic due to the rebuild that the Steelers have had to go through over the last couple of years offensively, rebuilding the offensive line, making the transition from Big Ben to somebody else, and they still have yet to find Big Ben's successor. Russell Wilson definitely isn't it. He's just a Band-Aid for the lingering issue the Steelers have had at the quarterback position ever since Ben Roethlisberger hung up the cleats. Mike Tomlin can't be trusted to make the right decision when it comes to finding a capable starting quarterback who can win in arguably the toughest division in the NFL. It doesn't matter if he has a winning record against Lamar Jackson. Because what does that mean when it comes playoff time? The difference between the Steelers winning and losing against the Buffalo Bills was because Buffalo had a better quarterback. When Josh Allen ripped off that 50-yard touchdown run and he just absolutely obliterated a Pittsburgh Steelers defender, ran them flat over, that was the difference in having a great quarterback and having below average quarterback play. And what had me the most confused is how it took Mike Tomlin the final month of the season to realize that Mason Rudolph was the best quarterback on the roster. I don't trust his decision-making. His clock management is questionable as well. If I was Pittsburgh, I would have told Mike Tomlin, we're going to wait until the end of next season to extend you. You can be a good coach, but that doesn't mean that your message with the said team that you spent so many years with hasn't become stale and dry. We saw it with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. You can't say, man, the Steelers can't fire Mike Tomlin because there's not a better coach who can replace him. Who are you going to get to replace him? Bill Belichick? It's not about finding if there's a good enough candidate to replace him. It's about getting in somebody who's new, who has a new message, who has a better chance of resonating with the franchise than what Mike Tomlin is right now, because his words are able to elevate this team to a certain extent. What the Mike Tomlin fan club overlooks is how people peak in life. And once you reach a certain peak, that's it. There's no way you can elevate past that. We saw Andy Reid peak in Philadelphia. The furthest he was able to get that organization was a Super Bowl appearance and a loss to New England. And after that, they were never able to come close to winning a Super Bowl ever again. Andy Reid, just because he didn't win in Philadelphia didn't mean he couldn't win elsewhere. He went to Kansas City, and he was able to win championships with Patrick Mahomes. Now, having the greatest quarterback of all time helps you, but Andy Reid has played a large part in Patrick Mahomes becoming the GOAT that he is today. Same thing with Tony Dungy. When Tony Dungy was coaching for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he got fired and replaced for John Gruden, who in his first season replacing Tony Dungy took the Buccaneers to a Super Bowl and won it. Tony Dungy went to Indianapolis and he won a championship and hosted a Lombardi with Peyton Manning. Just because you're a great coach doesn't mean that excuses you for not being fired, dealing to underachieving, when the standard in Pittsburgh has been championships and the standard has went down. Mike Tomlin always preaches the standard is the standard, but yet the standard has regressed every single year under him. We went from expecting championships to now tolerating winning seasons and first-round playoff exits. That is not what the standard used to be in Pittsburgh. The standard is never supposed to go down. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were a dynasty thanks in due part to when you played Mike Tomlin's Steelers in the postseason, you knew that was a guaranteed win for you because you knew Mike Tomlin's defense wasn't going to be able to slow down Tom Brady. If you say, well, Mike Tomlin didn't have a great quarterback, JT, that's why we've lost the last couple of years. What about when he had Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Big Ben all in their prime? They were still coming up short. You see, what I wanted the Steelers to do this offseason was part ways with Mike Tomlin and hire Jim Harbaugh. Some people think it's idiotic, but I thought it made perfect sense. Jim Harbaugh in the 4 seasons that he was coaching for the 49ers, won more playoff games than what Mike Tomlin has won in the last decade. He took the 49ers to 3 straight NFC championships his first 3 years and 1 Super Bowl appearance. So if Jim Harbaugh, who hasn't coached in the league for just as long as Mike Tomlin, has been unable to win in the playoffs, has more postseason success than him, wouldn't that not have been a better replacement? The Steelers need somebody new who has a new message, who has a different outlook on how things should be ran, because Mike Tomlin's ways of winning are outdated. Russell Wilson isn't good, and neither is Justin Fields. Yeah, this is a pretty good team when you look at everything else, minus wide receiver, but the Steelers are competing for 4th or 3rd place in the AFC North this year. You only were lucky enough to finish and have the kind of season that you did thanks to Joe Burrow's injury, because we knew once he went down, that was Cincinnati's season. But even then, Zach Taylor was still able to keep Cincinnati afloat despite not having Joe Burrow. But with him coming back, I doubt the Steelers are going to be able to finish ahead of Cincinnati, and they damn sure are not about to finish ahead of Baltimore. Since Lamar Jackson has been the starting quarterback for the Ravens, he's had the 2nd best win-loss record in the NFL behind who? Patrick Mahomes. When you have a great quarterback, a franchise caliber one at that, it makes things a lot easier for you. And I will never forget when the Steelers passed up on Lamar Jackson in 2018 for Terrell Edmonds. It still makes me sick to my stomach thinking about that. The reason why Steeler fans are so divided over Mike Tomlin and why they want to change is because they're tired of the complacency, they're tired of the mediocrity, and they're tired of the standard when really the new standard is being okay with winning 10, maybe 11 games and getting sent home to Cancun in the wild card round. Think about some of the playoff losses that the Steelers have had the last couple of years. You lost to Jacksonville at home in the divisional round, led by Blake Bortles. You lost to Cleveland with the interim head coach and Baker Mayfield. The Mike Tomlin fan club can use the whole he's never had a losing season, so that shows consistency all they want to, but it also shows complacency, and it shows you why the Steelers should move on. They've peaked, and that's why this fan base is divided on Mike Tomlin, why they get upset when people keep using the whole he's never had a losing season argument, because all his winning seasons are at this point are participation trophies. Because when's the last time the Steelers have ever been mentioned in the Super Bowl conversation? Even this year, this is the best team that Pittsburgh has had on paper in the last 5-6 years, and yet they're not expected to finish no worse, no better than what, 4th, 3rd place in this division? And even if they do find a way to make it to the playoffs, how far are they going to go? At worst, you make it to the divisional round. Cool. But after that, what are you going to do next season? Are you going to bring back Russell Wilson, running back with him another couple of years? Because he's only getting older and he's only getting worse. Russell Wilson's skill set is based on getting outside the pocket, improvising with his legs. And the older you get, the less athletic you become. There's no way the Steelers are going to win anything meaningful with Russell Wilson. They call him Mr. Unlimited. Well, last year under Sean Payton, he looked pretty limited to me. And Justin Fields is still a big question mark. He can't read defenses. He struggles with accuracy. He's a better runner than he is a quarterback. At this point, you might as well use the Lamar Jackson running back jokes and put those on Justin Fields, because that's the only thing Justin Fields is at this point. He's a running back playing the quarterback position. I'm not against Mike Tomlin getting this extension as if next year he's able to finally figure out who's going to be his franchise quarterback. But if he's still going to continue to be Stevie Wonder when it comes to quarterback evaluation, then he needs to get gone and get the pink slip. I don't care about never having a losing season. When does it matter to win championships again? Tell me, when can the Steelers be considered a Super Bowl contender again instead of a contender to barely make it into the playoffs? The next thing I want to talk about is Aaron Rodgers. I'm a little worried about Aaron Rodgers coming into this season, all right? He's getting up there in age. He's in his 40s. And I love Aaron Rodgers. He's the last OG quarterback of my childhood. Drew Brees is gone. Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, Eli. They're all out the league now. Aaron Rodgers is the only quarterback from my childhood left standing. And I want him to go out on top. But I remember Peyton Manning, his final season in Denver. That was the worst version of Peyton Manning that we saw since his rookie season, but he was able to win a Super Bowl because the defense was able to carry him throughout that postseason stretch, and he made enough throws during that postseason run to elevate Denver to a Lombardi trophy. Aaron Rodgers, he might end up suffering the same fate that we saw Peyton Manning suffer 2015. Father Time knocking on the door and coming to collect. And you can only avoid Father Time for so long until he finally catches up with you. Even Tom Brady's last season, he wasn't as good as what he was throughout the majority of his career. His final season in Tampa Bay, what happened his last game? They didn't look competitive against the Dallas Cowboys, and he was washed. You see, with Aaron Rodgers being so old, and him having these questions about his health. Hell, I saw him making some great no-look passes and OTAs, and then a few days later, I see a video of him ending up limping to the sidelines, holding his ankle. If the New York Jets are going to have a successful season, it's going to be because of Aaron Rodgers. And if he stays healthy, I believe that the Jets are good enough to win the AFC East with how good their defense is. They improved the offensive line, and they got a pretty good supporting cast around Aaron Rodgers. But what could derail what could be a great thing is Aaron Rodgers' health. Last season, it just felt too good to be true, and 3 plays in, Aaron Rodgers gets injured. And the older you get, the more injury prone you become. Now, all-time great players are able to sustain a high level of play longer than your typical player. If you're a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, you can play a lot longer than the average quarterback in the league and sustain a high level of play. But it's been a couple of years since we've seen Aaron Rodgers play at an MVP level. There's a reason why Green Bay was willing to part ways with him and give it a go with Jordan Love. We don't know just how good Aaron Rodgers is. We can speculate and, have hope that this is going to be the Aaron Rodgers that we used to call the bad man. But I'll be lying to you if I just wasn't a little bit concerned. And it's not really more so the level of play that has me concerned, but it's his health. If you can barely make it through OTAs without getting hobbled up, how can you sustain being healthy a whole entire 17-game regular season? Father Time may end up getting Aaron Rodgers this season. And that's what worries me. And I get that you can't predict injuries. Injuries are so uncertain. They're just so random. But with Aaron Rodgers coming off that Achilles injury, I just don't know if he's going to be able to last with the New York Jets. And maybe his play kind of regresses a little bit. Who knows if this is still top 5, top 10 Aaron Rodgers at quarterback? What if this is a top 15 level Aaron Rodgers that we see in 2024? Is that good enough for the New York Jets to still win this division over Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa? I know people are low on Tua, but if Aaron Rodgers doesn't show up this year, they can most definitely overtake them, and the Jets can fall to 3rd place in the East. And there's a lot of pressure on Robert Saleh this year. We know the defense is going to be good, but the way he handles these situations, he's a nice guy, but he's not really built to handle a lot of pressure. You hired Nathaniel Hackett. You brought in Alan Lazard, who you are looking to part ways with. The only reason he's there is because of Aaron. The New York Jets are Aaron or bust. And that's what concerns me about the New York Jets. If Aaron isn't there, it becomes a shit show. Nathaniel Hackett is the worst offensive coordinator in the league. They wanted to get rid of him, but I guess Aaron Rodgers put his foot down like, no, this is my dude. He's the sole reason I came here. So the Jets have bought into all of Aaron Rodgers' commands. And their season, their fate, all lies on him. A few weeks ago, he said that he has to come in, he has to perform. If not, we're all going to be cooked. Robert Saleh gets fired. The GM, Joe Douglas, gets fired. And he most likely has to hit the retirement home. We saw Father Time catch up to Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Eli Manning. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game, but when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. And that's what has me a little bit worried about the New York Jets this year. Am I picking them to win the AFC East? Yes. But it's only due to Buffalo losing so much in free agency, bringing in new pieces on offense. I'm not really sold on their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. And the Miami Dolphins, I think they're in for a major implosion this year. If they extend Tua Tagovailoa, I think that's going to be one of the biggest mistakes that the Dolphins franchise has ever made. Because he's not worth $50 million. And the majority of your cap space is going to be tied to 3 players. Tua, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill. You still don't have the offensive line right. And your defense, you know, those guys didn't like Vic Fangio, who's one of the most respected defensive coordinators in the league. And the Dolphins under Mike McDaniel, yeah, I love the brother as a coach. He's one of the best offensive minds in the game, but he has a losing record against teams that have a above 500 record. The New York Jets definitely can win the AFC East if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. But can you trust him to stay healthy? I don't know. Last season, the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, they got out to a pretty slow start. They started out 2-5. And then during the second half of the year, around the month of November and Thanksgiving, or on Thanksgiving, Jordan Love just flipped the switch and he played like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He finished the second half of last year one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league with a 26-5 touchdown interception ratio, and that includes what he did in the postseason. Upsetting Dallas, giving the 49ers a scare. If it wasn't for his late fourth quarter interception, the Packers would have been in the NFC Championship game playing against Detroit, and maybe they would have been in the Super Bowl. But despite the success that the Packers had late during the second half of last year, there's a good amount of people out there who are not sold that would tell you that Green Bay's 2023 campaign was fool's gold. Is Jordan Love as good as what people are hyping him up to be? He's widely considered to be a top 7, top 8, no worse than top 10 quarterback. He's eyeing a new contract extension that's going to make him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the game. And the Packers are regarded by a lot of people in the media to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the NFC. But are we overrating Green Bay? Is the hype warranted? Is it real? Or is this just a team that was able to benefit off having a light schedule in the second half and it was a fluke? To be honest with you, I'll go the latter. I'll say that Green Bay is legit. You don't have a 26-5 touchdown ratio by fluke. And I watched a lot of Jordan Love last year. His first couple of games were really good. But then after his first 2 games, for a good month or two, he didn't look that good. He struggled in the fourth quarter. There was a couple of games that he lost due to bad decision-making late. But then around Thanksgiving, that's when he started to turn it on. And you wonder if he can sustain this level of play. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't. You got an offensive-minded coach. You got a good offensive line. And you got one of the best young groups of wide receivers in the NFL. If you were to rank your top 5 wide receiving cores, Green Bay will be up there. Do they have a star wide receiver? No, but they have a lot of good young ones. They got a lot of quality in that wide receiver room. The only thing that Green Bay has been missing is having a good defense. Joe Barry was one of the worst defensive coordinators in the league, and they replaced him with Jeff Hafley, who formerly was the head coach of Boston College. And I expect him to get that defense right. From a talent standpoint, Green Bay has one of the best defenses in the NFL, top to bottom. Great linebackers, good secondary, and a really good defensive line. All you need is the right coaching. If they would have had a good defensive coordinator last year, like a Brian Flores, I could have seen them making it to the Super Bowl. The only thing holding back Green Bay is defense, and I think they finally have found the answer to that. The NFC North is a dogfight. You got Detroit, you got the Chicago Bears that are going to be really good this year with Caleb Williams, and even Minnesota could surprise people. Kevin O'Connell is an offensive-minded coach. I trust him to be able to have success with either Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, whoever he chooses to go with. But Detroit, their biggest threat is the Packers. And I'm not betting on Detroit making it back to the NFC Championship this year. My conference championship prediction for the NFC, way too early, is Green Bay versus the Los Angeles Rams. Two of the more younger teams in the league that have very good quarterbacks with very talented offensive-minded coaches. It's an offensive-dominated league. There's more reasons to be optimistic about Green Bay this year than it is to be low on them and view them as a fluke. Just because they started out 2-5, 3-6 doesn't mean anything. Because in the league that we play in right now, we already know it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. How many teams have got out to fast starts just to implode in the second half? I.e. the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were 8-1 last year, and then the second half of the season rolls around and they end up missing the playoffs. The Green Bay Packers, for them to gotten as hot as what they did last year and to carry that into the playoffs, beating the Dallas Cowboys, to me, stamped Jordan Love as legit. I get that the Dallas Cowboys are overrated and they disappoint every single year, but let's not act like Dan Quinn didn't have that defense playing at a high level. That defense has been the lead under him since he became defensive coordinator there. And we remember how porous those defenses were. And for Jordan Love to just rip apart that defense and outplay Dak Prescott was damn impressive. Really. I was nothing but impressed every time I watched Jordan Love play. The ability to get outside the pocket and make big throws off platform. And ironically, him getting outside the pocket and making those impressive off-platform throws is what cost Green Bay a spot in the NFC Championship. Even though he's been in the league for a while, that still technically was his rookie season. Because that was his full-time year as a starting quarterback, and he produced at a high level the second half of the year. And with the Packers only getting better, bringing in Josh Jacobs to replace Aaron Jones, who should be an upgrade because Aaron Jones is like fragile luggage. You breathe on him, the dude gets injured. Josh Jacobs, when he's on the field, he's a top 5 running back. Your offensive line not only has a lot of talent, but it has a lot of good depth. So if one guy goes down, you'll have a backup that's good enough to still give you starting caliber play. Jeff Hafley has been the missing piece to the puzzle for the Green Bay Packers. Now with him, I think that it's only fair to expect this team to make it to the conference championship, and I think they got a good shot of being able to win the NFC North this year. The Detroit Lions, they're running it back. They are able to keep offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. But like Dan Campbell said, after they lost that NFC championship last year, there's no guarantee that they're going to make it back. It's tough to win in the NFL. It's tough to get to that spot. I see Jordan Love as a quarterback that right now he's in ascension mode. And when you have a quarterback that's in ascension mode, you're still trying to figure out just how good they are because they just do nothing but continue to get better. So I look at the Green Bay Packers as a team that is legit. I think they're good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. And I don't think that 2023 was a fluke season. You had a young quarterback that was up and down really early into that year. That's expected when you have a first-year starter at quarterback. There's going to be some growing pains. Even C.J. Stroud, as good as what he was, he had some struggles. He had growing pains also. That's part of having a first-year starter at QB. But once Jordan Love got hot and he got settled in late November, the Packers were one of the best teams in the NFL. Before we move on, if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Follow us on Instagram and X. You can follow us on IG at JT Sports _, on X at JT Sports __. And give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Now, real quick, I got to get me a little sip of water. When we get back, I'm about to give you guys my NFL head coach hot seat rankings. Which head coaches have the hottest seats in the NFL going into this year. Okay. I didn't mean to do that too soon. Which head coaches in the NFL going into 2024 have the hottest seats in the league? I'm here to give you guys my NFL head coach hot seat rankings. Hot seat ratings, excuse me. So, which head coaches are on the hot seat going into this year? Who has the hottest seat in the league? You know, who has the best chance to get fired? We're going to start off with Doug Peterson. I think his hot seat rating right now is pretty warm. Yeah, if Jacksonville misses the playoffs again, there definitely is going to be some huge concerns when it comes to his job security. But the Jaguars are coming off 2 back-to-back 9-8 winning seasons. And if Jacksonville has a losing season this year, I still see him having another year in Jacksonville to get it right. Sean Khan is one of the more patient owners in the league. He didn't have a lot of patience with Urban Meyer just because when you see your head coach out clubbing after a loss, you got no choice but to fire him. And plus, the team and his coaches hated his guts. I don't really see Doug Peterson going anywhere, so I think that his hot seat is pretty warm right now, unless the Jaguars just completely implode and they go 2-15, 3-13 or something like that. Robert Saleh, though, his seat is scorching hot. It's playoffs or bust for him in the New York Jets this year, and it all hinges on the success of Aaron Rodgers. And it's unfortunate because I think Robert Saleh is a pretty good head coach. The only thing that has held him back is the fact that the Jets have missed on quarterback. When you miss on a quarterback, it sets your franchise back 5 years, and it also puts you in a really hard situation to win being a defensive-minded coach. The defenses that Robert Saleh has had every year he's been the head man in New York have been nothing short of spectacular. And they've carried this team. And that's been the main reason New York has been unable to make it to the playoffs, because they've had to overcome terrible quarterback play. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't look like the Aaron Rodgers that we saw during his time in Green Bay, or he doesn't play at a top 10 level, or let's say, God forbid, he gets injured again, Robert Saleh is going to have to find a way to still overcome that and win. He has one of the hottest seats in the NFL, and it's scorching red right now. He can't even sit down. Before he sits down at night, he has to breathe or, blow cold air on his chair before he's able to take a seat, because, that thing is cooking, and it's cooking with some grease. Nick Sirianni, his hot seat rating to me is hot. It's not scorching hot yet, only because it's not like Philadelphia completely imploded and they missed out on the postseason. But the fact that you started out 10-1 and then you just collapsed the way that you did, losing to Drew Lock, who engineered a 92-yard game-winning touchdown drive, was really embarrassing. And what was more embarrassing is you losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a wild card round. Who the hell saw that coming? And I flip-flopped in between who I picked to win that game. All week long, I told myself I was taking the Philadelphia Eagles. But then the closer I got to the game starting, I went with the Buccaneers. But then 5 minutes before kickoff, I said, you know what? I'm going to take Philadelphia. There's no way Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are going to lose to Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. And I regretted it. I should have just stuck with Tampa Bay. They bring in an entirely new coaching staff. Their previous OC wasn't good. But then they end up parting ways with their defensive coordinator too. And you replace him with Vic Fangio, who did a fantastic job with the Miami Dolphins. The only reason he ended up getting let go by Miami is because he wasn't able to get along with the players because he's an old school minded coach, and the Dolphins are a soft, lighthearted kind of team. The Eagles are going to take well to Vic Fangio's coaching, and Nick Sirianni, him hiring Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore is a decent offensive coordinator. At one point, he was a head coach candidate, and last year, the Chargers offense was pretty good up until Justin Herbert got injured. They still have one of the most talented rosters in the league. You got a really good defense. You revamped the secondary via the draft. Nick Sirianni, if they're not able to win this division and win a playoff game, I definitely could see him ended up getting the pink slip at the end of this year. But I don't think his hot seat is scorching hot right now, only because he's not too long removed from a Super Bowl. Brian Daboll, okay, his hot seat is pretty hot. I don't really know what to think about this situation right now. The ownership was the reason why they extended Daniel Jones. Brian Daboll and company, they weren't really all too thrilled about having Daniel Jones back. And the rumors say that if Drake May was on the board, that's who they preferred to pick in this past year's draft with that 6th overall selection. But instead, they opted with Malik Neighbors when the Patriots decided not to trade down and just stay at 3 and take Drake May. So you're going to have Drew Lock and Danny Dimes as your two best options at quarterback. I don't really see it panning out. I don't even think they have a good enough team to even win 6 games this year. Brian Daboll, if the expectation from the front office is for him to make it to the playoffs, then he's cooked. But I could still see him getting one more year only because the success that he had during his first year. And he also can go up to the front office and say, hey, y'all trying to fire me because y'all forcing me to win with the quarterback that I never wanted in the first place? If you're him, I would use that reasoning and that logic in my back pocket to make sure that I can buy myself one more year. Next year's quarterback class isn't that great, but you do have the options of picking from Shedeur Sanders and Carson Beck, who are two really good prospects going into this college football season. So if everything hits the fan this year, you're going to have the option to pick one of those two guys, or maybe you can luck up and get Dak Prescott in free agency if the Cowboys don't plan on extending him long term. Shout out to Here We Go Show in the comment section. Next up, we got Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen, he exceeded my expectations last year. He found the way to win 9 games, but it wasn't pretty. And most of his wins came against teams that were average or below average. There's still a lot that Dennis Allen has to prove this year, and his playoffs are bust for him. If he doesn't get New Orleans to the playoffs, he definitely is going to end up getting fired. It seems as if him getting a new offensive coordinator and a new OC in there, bringing in, I forgot who's the father of the OC that they have, but they have a new OC who they have a lot of confidence in. And if he can get that offense playing right, and that defense can sustain the level of play that they had last year, the Saints definitely could be a team that ends up winning that division, because the division is not that tough. The Panthers aren't going to be that good. The Falcons are going to be pretty good. I expect the Buccaneers to come back down to earth. They didn't beat a single playoff team last year, but the pressure definitely is on for Dennis Allen. A lot of people haven't really talked about Dennis Allen that much. People have kind of backed off him only because they went 9-8 last year. But there's potential for things to get really ugly down in NOLA this year. Dennis Allen still hasn't proven much as a head coach to me. I still don't really love his decision-making. I think his clock management isn't that great neither. And that offense, especially looking at their offensive line situation, isn't looking pretty. So whoever they hired to be their new offensive coordinator, he's pretty much going to decide the fate of Dennis Allen this year, because if he doesn't end up panning out, New Orleans could be an 8-9 team, and he can end up being the first thing cooking once the season is over. Matt Eberflus, his hot seat is pretty hot right now. He's kind of in the playoff or bust situation too, but the only reason I don't see his hot seat being scorching hot is because they drafted Caleb Williams with the 1st overall pick. And one thing about drafting a young quarterback early into their career is that you can ruin their development if they have to overcome coaching staff changes. And bringing in a new coaching staff, year 2 for Caleb Williams, wouldn't it be ideal for him getting better? Matt Eberflus showed you a lot during the second half of 2023. His defense played at a top 10 level, especially when they made the trade for Montez Sweat at the trade deadline. And they look like a playoff team with everything that they bring in during the offseason. You trade for Keenan Allen. You pair him up with Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. So you got one of the best receiving cores in the league. Your offensive line is better than what a lot of people give it credit for. The reason why that offensive line looks bad on paper and why the sack numbers don't look good is because Justin Fields held on to the ball too long. And there were a couple of games that Chicago could have won that they lost because Justin Fields happens to be the worst fourth quarter quarterback in the National Football League. Well, Caleb Williams, if he ends up being as good as advertised, or let's say he gives Chicago top 15 quarterback play, with how good their defense is, they're good enough to be a playoff team. Are they going to be a high seed? Probably not. I could see them sneaking in as a 7th or 6th seed, but that should still be good enough for Matt Eberflus to keep his job. The Bears have gotten better every single year under him. The defense has played at a pretty high level under him as well. That's what you want to see out of a head coach, to give you confidence in him bringing him back for another year. Big Mike McCarthy. You know, he has one of the hottest seats in the NFL going into 2024. He's had a lot of regular season success in Dallas. But the thing with Dallas, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that a successful season isn't defined by what you do in a regular season. It's defined by how many playoff wins you can get. And Mike McCarthy hasn't really had too much success in the playoffs. You know, they got embarrassed by the Green Bay Packers last year, which nobody saw that coming. Jerry Jones was visibly frustrated and upset. And I believe this is the last year of his contract. So if he doesn't win this year, they don't even got to fire him. They can just let him go and bring in whoever else they want to. And what makes this an even more dire situation for Mike McCarthy is the candidates that you're going to have out there. Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel. Hell, if Jerry Jones wants to get crazy and he can pull it off, maybe they go and they hire Deion Sanders. Who knows? But you talk about coaches that have to win and then some. Mark McCarthy, Big Mike, he has to get it done this year. Dallas has to make it to the divisional round, conference championship. Him getting to the wild card round isn't going to be enough. Dallas has to actually make some noise in the playoffs for him to keep his job. And that's what makes it so hard for him to stay around in Dallas past 2024. Because out of all the head coaches whose job security is in question, he's the one who has to do the most. And Dallas still has a pretty good team despite the depth that they lost, but they're not as good as what they were previously. And lastly, we got Sean McDermott. I don't see him getting fired anytime soon. You see, I expect this year, regardless of what happens, for him to still stick around. Even if Buffalo has a losing season, and let's say they go 8-9, 7-10, I still have a hard time envisioning Buffalo willing to part ways with the head coach who's given them the most success that they've ever had since the Jim Kelly days when he was at quarterback. But his seat is pretty hot. You know, that's why I say he's heating up, because his hot seat isn't hot to the point where, yeah, it's scorching because it's playoffs and then he has to win some playoff games like Mike McCarthy. But at the same time, you know, like, he just can't come into this year and Buffalo just put up a goose egg and they're uncompetitive, especially when you have Josh Allen. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the game. When you have a quarterback as good as Josh Allen, there's not a single game that you don't have a chance at being able to win. And this division is still up for the taking for the Buffalo Bills. They've won this division for the last couple of years in a row, and it's just hard to picture Buffalo firing a head coach that's been as consistent as what Sean McDermott has had, considering the history that this team has had prior to hiring him. He ended their long-time playoff drought. They've been talked about more than ever since hiring him. He did a great job of assembling a coaching staff that was able to develop Josh Allen. So I expect Buffalo to still keep Sean McDermott, although, you know, he just can't come in and just have a 6-win, 5-win season. You know, there is some pressure for him to still keep Buffalo competitive, but I think that Buffalo's going into this season with the expectation that this may be a slight rebuild considering everything that Sean McDermott lost on the defensive side of the ball, losing Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. You lose Gabe Davis to free agency. You trade away Stephon Diggs because it just wasn't working out anymore. So this is it for my head coach hot seat ratings. Give your thoughts in the comment section down below. Shout out to K. Roan with the $2 donation. He says, powerful JT Sports Live. Appreciate you. I appreciate everybody in the chat. My guy Still 43 asks, who's the quarterback you wanted? Man, I just wanted us to get a proven quarterback. I wanted Kirk Cousins. I would have had no problem with Kirk Cousins. I just wanted somebody better than Russell Wilson. When the Steelers got Russell Wilson, I wasn't thrilled. I love Justin Fields, but he's still a big question mark. I don't really have too much confidence in him neither. I just don't like what the Steelers have at quarterback going into this season, especially with Arthur Smith calling the plays. And with a healthy Lamar and Joe Burrow having the toughest schedule in the NFL, it's really hard to see Mike Tomlin having a winning season this year. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. We got one more thing that I want to discuss before we get up on out of here, and that is the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, to me, are the NFL's biggest mystery team because they could be good enough to win the AFC South, and they also could be bad enough where they finish in last place and they don't win any more than 5 games, because this is a team that, when you think of their quarterback and Will Levis, he showed a lot of flash last year. Remember, he bursted onto the scene in his debut and threw 4 touchdowns against the Atlanta Falcons. And then he had a pretty good performance against the Miami Dolphins. But outside of those 2 games, there was a lot of mid to below average QB play in between those 2 performances. And we still don't really know just how truly good Will Levis is. Some people are quick to anoint this dude as the franchise quarterback that the Tennessee Titans have been looking for. He has a great arm. He's a really good athlete. But we've seen this story a couple of years ago with Drew Lock. Because remember, Drew Lock, when he got in and he was starting for the Denver Broncos, the last couple of games of his rookie season, he was pretty good. As a matter of fact, I believe that he went 5-0, 4-1 as a starter. But then, following his sophomore season, he didn't look good at all. He got Vic Fangio fired. And you bring in Brian Callahan as your head coach. He's going to be calling the plays. He's a first-time play caller. He's never called plays before. Yeah, he did have a role in Joe Burrow's development and his success, but mainly Zach Taylor was the dude who was in charge of helping Joe Burrow reach that level. So there's concerns about how good Will Levis is. Is he really the franchise quarterback that the Tennessee Titans believe he can be or is? And then Brian Callahan, how good is his play calling going to be? But let's say Brian Callahan ends up being a good play caller and Will Levis ends up panning out to actually be the Titans franchise quarterback. This team is good enough to win the AFC South, and they could easily overtake Jacksonville. Jacksonville right now is a little wobbly. In Indianapolis, like Will Levis, we still don't know how truly good Anthony Richardson is. One of these quarterbacks is destined to disappoint. Anthony Richardson, I think he could have a pretty decent year, but there could be more growing pains with him at quarterback as compared to Will Levis, just because Will Levis has had way more starts under his belt. With Anthony Richardson, the big thing that he needed his rookie year was reps, and he still doesn't have a lot of them at the professional level as compared to a guy like Will Levis. And having an offensive-minded coach in Brian Callahan should be able to help Will Levis ascend in his second season, because this is an offensive-minded league. Mike Vrabel, being a defensive-minded guy, not really being too good on the offensive end of things, didn't really do Will Levis too much justice. Plus, he had to overcome having a bad offensive line. Tennessee brings in Bill Callahan, Brian Callahan's dad, and Bill Callahan is a legendary offensive line coach. If offensive line coaches were able to get into the Hall of Fame, Bill Callahan probably most likely would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's how good this dude is when it comes to having good offensive line play. Good example is last year with the Cleveland Browns. They lost 3 starters on the offensive line at offensive tackle to season-ending injuries. And despite that, they still had one of the better offensive lines in the league in 2023. That was mainly due in part to to how good of an offensive line coach Bill Callahan is. The Tennessee Titans, the left side of their offensive line should be pretty good this year. You got Peter Skoronski at left guard. J.C. Latham is going to be starting for you at left tackle. I believe that left side of that old line is going to be pretty good. What gives me pause for concern is the right side. You bring in an improved group of wide receivers for Will Levis to throw the football to. He didn't really have anybody outside of a Conroe, the tight end, and DeAndre Hopkins. You get Tyler Boyd. You sign Calvin Ridley to a massive long-term deal. So there's enough weapons for Will Levis to have a pretty big jump in year 2. And then your running back position, it could go either way. Tony Pollard, he hasn't looked the same ever since he suffered that injury a few years back. He lost a little bit of his explosiveness. Same thing with Tajay Spears. He's a really good running back too. My only concern about Tajay Spears is, there are some concerns about his long-term health. He has some knee issues that was a part of the reason why he fell a little bit during the draft, because I thought he was going to be one of the first running backs off the board a few years back when he came out of Tulane. He has really good vision. He's pretty good after contact, but, there definitely were some injury concerns about him during the draft process. But offensively, Tennessee could go either way. This could be a really good offense. Will Levis could be a possible MVP candidate, but he also could be a giant whiff, and there could be a lot of false hope based on what we saw out of him his first season as a rookie quarterback in the league. And plus, we don't know just how good of a head coach Brian Callahan is. He's never called plays before. We've never seen him coach, so we don't know how good his end-game adjustments are going to be, how he's going to look in late-game situations. Their defense also could be pretty solid. They got Chidobe Awuzie. You got a really good secondary. You also got T'Vondre Sweat. And you pair him up with Jeffrey Simmons, you got one of the better interior defensive line duos in the league. And you got a defensive coordinator that was in high regard. Anybody that comes from John Harbaugh's staff in Baltimore is always seen in a pretty high light. Mike McDonald got a head coaching opportunity with the Seattle Seahawks. And many Ravens fans thought that he was going to be the dude who was going to be replaced by the current defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. However, like Brian Callahan, we never seen him call plays before. We don't know how good this dude is going to be at calling plays for the Tennessee Titans defense. And the Tennessee Titans, losing Mike Vrabel definitely is going to be a big loss for that defense. Not saying that defense is going to play terribly, but Mike Vrabel is one of the best defensive minds in the league. So it's only fair to expect that defense to drop off just a tad bit. They also have some concerns when it comes to their ability to get after the quarterback. Outside of having Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, there's nobody else on that defensive unit that has proven production at being able to get after the quarterback at a high level. Now, you have a lot of guys that are good rotational pieces, such as Arden Key, Sebastian Joseph Day, who's pretty good against the run, but I had concerns about that pass rush. And their linebacker unit, you lost FAU alumni Azeez Al-Shaair to the Houston Texans. That's a big loss, and you're replacing him with Kenneth Murray, who's one of the worst inside linebackers in the league, and he's a bust. So that defense, they could be really bad. This could be one of the worst defenses in the league, despite the talent that they have on that unit, just because you have concerns about their ability to get after the quarterback. You don't know how good of a play caller you have as your defensive coordinator. So as much as I like what Tennessee has on paper, NFL games aren't won on paper. They're won on the field. And the floor for Tennessee is extremely low. They could be a 4 or 5 win team this year if everything goes wrong. But if everything goes right, they could be competing with the Houston Texans for the AFC South title potentially. That's what makes Tennessee the NFL's biggest mystery team this year in my eyes, because you don't know what the hell to expect. Most teams you look at and you're able to give them a really good projection. Most of us, we look at Jacksonville, we could see them being a 9, 10 win team. At worst, they're a 6 win team. You look at the Tennessee Titans, though, you really don't know with Tennessee. There's a lot of gray area with the Titans. And it's just a huge mystery how all of this is going to pan out. I'm going to say this. They got a football team. And they got a way better team from a talent standpoint than what they had last season. But you lose Mike Vrabel, one of the better head coaches in the league, really underrated, able to win despite not having a lot. But he didn't know offense. You bring in an offensive-minded coach with this being an offensive-minded league. Teams now, trending towards having offensive-minded coaches. So this definitely was a decent hire based on trends, but we don't know just how good of a play caller he is, just like we don't know how good of a quarterback Will Levis truly is. There are some people that believe he's a franchise quarterback. Other people, like myself, I'm in wait-and-see mode. So depending on how Brian Callahan and Will Levis perform this year, it's going to have a giant impact on determining how good the Titans are going to be. And even if these two guys play well, not just play well, but if Will Levis plays well, then that means that the play calling from Brian Callahan also is pretty good. But what about the defense? You got a good offense, but your defense could still be your weakness. So there are a lot of reasons to be high on the Titans, but there's also a ton of reasons to be low on them as well. And it's really hard for me to find a middle ground with them. I was doing some record predictions a couple of weeks ago. Not my official record predictions, but I was just going over, just doing it off the head without doing too much research. And I had the Tennessee Titans as TBD because I really don't know with them. They got a pretty difficult schedule, but they got a talented team. And I truly don't know how to assess this team going into 2024. They're one of those teams that when it comes to over-under win totals, I'm going to just leave them alone because I really don't know what to expect from them. They could be really good. I could see them winning the AFC South, surprising a lot of people, but I also could see them coming in last place. It's just so many questions about them, but also there's so many things to love about them. So I don't know how to feel about the Tennessee Titans this year. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find an audio episode of this. You can find the audio version of this episode in audio format on all podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. Give us a 5-star review. Listen to the JT Sports Podcast. We're available on all podcasting platforms. Follow us on Instagram at JT_Sports_ and on X at JT___. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out K Roan with the $1.99 donation. Shout out Here We Go Show. Make sure you guys check them out. Really good Steelers content that he posts up there. Check out my guy. Also, shout out to Skanazy. Yo, JT, hope you're doing good, brother. Keep up with the fire content. I appreciate you, man. Appreciate my guy, K Roan again. Shout out ET. Great episode, my guy. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I don't know when we're going to go live. I'm trying to figure out the upload schedule, and there's some modifications I'm trying to make as well. But we should be going live eventually around Thursday, maybe Friday. I'll do another live stream. Let me know if you guys want a college football episode, another dedicated NFL episode, or a blend of both. But